The queen and the king were sent back to their wedding day. They'd loathed each other in their past life, yet they chose to marry all over again. It turned out that in their last life, the queen had thrown in with a rebellion because she despised the king for being weak and useless. The king was stunned to discover the man behind it all was his own younger brother. The queen had believed the prince rose up for her sake, but without warning, he drove a dagger into her. The next moment, the king's favorite mistress walked over to stand at the prince's side, and the king realized she too had betrayed him. The queen understood, far too late, that she'd been used. In their final moments, the two of them swore that if they were ever granted another life, they'd never repeat the same mistakes. The next instant, they woke, back on their wedding day. The man asked the woman whether she was certain she wanted to marry him and be caged in the palace forever. She agreed without a flicker of hesitation. She was bent on making everyone who would betray her pay. He felt exactly the same, and they resolved to join forces for revenge. That night, the woman urged the man to take the heavy hairpins from her hair. Just then, a servant reported that the mistress was suffering chest pains and begged the king to come to her. The woman remembered how, last life, the king had rushed straight to her, leaving his bride to spend their wedding night alone and be mocked by everyone. This time, though, the man refused flat out, leaving the servant shocked. The woman couldn't help laughing at the sight. Then a maid arrived to announce that the prince had invited the woman to view the moon. The woman went still. She'd forgotten how active she herself had been in her past life. The man flew into a fury and accused her of impropriety. But the way she saw it, he was no better. So they decided to sign a pact never to betray one another. The man vowed he'd be no fool this life and would rule as a wise king. At that, the woman promptly produced a stack of state documents and told him to get to work on these urgent matters. From that night on, exhausted as he was, the woman kept him under constant watch, never giving him a chance to slack. The mistress couldn't believe the king had turned her away, certain the queen had meddled. She decided to act. Early the next morning, the woman went to pay her respects to the dowager queen, the one person who had genuinely cared for her in her past life. On her way out, she ran into the prince and walked right past him, ignoring him completely. It shook him to his core. Soon after, she came upon the mistress. The woman remembered how, last life, the mistress had faked being shoved into the water so the king would blame her and lock her away in her chambers. Filled with rage, she kicked the mistress straight into the water. The mistress was stunned. When a maid accused her of it, she kicked the maiden too? She watched the scene with deep satisfaction. Just then, the king arrived, and the two of them looked over at it together.